My name's Oliver. I'm 27 years old. If someone had told me 10 years ago that I'd one day inherit my grandfather's entire estate, worth an unbelievable $3.5 million, I would have laughed right in their face. Back then, I wasn't even sure I'd make it through the week, let alone end up sitting in a lawyer's office, surrounded by my estranged parents, both staring at me like vultures waiting for a meal. The irony is that these are the same parents who threw me out at 18 with nothing but a backpack and a warning that I wasn't their problem anymore. Yet, there they were, dressed to impress, acting as if the last decade of silence between us had never happened. Growing up, my family looked picture-perfect from the outside. My dad was a regional manager at a logistics firm, and my mom taught part-time while pretending to be the unofficial queen of our neighborhood. We weren't struggling financially. The house was nice, the cars were clean, and everything looked orderly. But behind that suburban image was one toxic rule. Appearances were everything. My older sister, Claire, was the golden child. Straight-A student, cheerleader, always the center of attention. She could do no wrong. I, on the other hand, was the disappointment. I wasn't rebellious, just different. I loved art more than sports, books more than cars, and I questioned the things they expected me to simply accept. That alone made me a problem in their eyes. As I got older, the cracks started showing. Anytime money came into the picture, it became a weapon. Claire got a brand new car for her 17th birthday. I got told to be grateful for hand-me-downs. Her college tuition was fully covered. I was told to figure it out myself. When I questioned the unfairness, I got lectures about being a man and earning my place. My mom would roll her eyes and say, "Oliver, you're too sensitive. The world doesn't owe you anything." My dad would mutter that I'd never make it on my own. I'll never forget one dinner when he leaned across the table and said, "If you're still under my roof by 18, you've failed." I laughed to hide how much it hurt. When my 18th birthday finally came, they didn't just kick me out. They made a show of it. They sat me down, told me I was cut off financially, and said it's time you learn the value of hard work. No money, no support, not even a place to stay. I walked out with a backpack, 2 changes of clothes, and a part-time job that barely covered groceries. That first night, I slept in the back seat of my car. Meanwhile, Claire was posting photos from her sorority house with her brand new laptop and a credit card from Dad. The only person who didn't abandon me was my grandfather, my dad's father. He'd always been different from the rest of them. Where my parents saw weakness, he saw potential. Where they mocked me for being quiet, he told me it meant I thought before I spoke. He never cared that I wasn't the athlete or the favorite. He just saw me for who I was. He'd invite me over for weekends, feed me, and let me crash on his couch when I had nowhere else to go. I never told him the full story of how my parents had treated me, but he wasn't blind. He noticed the tension. He could see how I flinched at the mention of my dad's name. Over the years, he became more of a father to me than my actual one ever was. Almost a decade later, I'd built a quiet, modest life. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I worked hard, saved what I could, and kept my distance from my family. Claire would occasionally text me photos of her vacations or new house, just to remind me I hadn't made it. My parents never called unless they wanted something. When they did, my mom's voice would turn sickly sweet. "Oliver, honey, "How are you?" And I'd peep my answers short. I knew better than to fall for it. Then came the phone call that changed everything. My grandfather had passed away. Even though I knew he'd been sick for a while, I still wasn't ready. Losing him felt like losing the only real family I'd ever had. When the lawyer called about the will reading, I assumed I might get a keepsake, maybe his watch or a letter. I never imagined I'd be inheriting everything. The day of the reading, I walked into that oak-paneled office and froze. My parents and Claire were already there, dressed as if for a gala. My mom's smile was tight. My dad sat smugly with one leg crossed, and Claire gave me a quick once-over, like she was measuring what I was worth. I wanted to turn around and walk out, but I stayed. My mom leaned toward me, whispering, "Don't worry, Oliver. We'll make sure the estate is handled properly." My dad added, "Yes, we'll manage it for you." They were already counting the money in their heads. Then the lawyer cleared his throat. Per the wishes of the late Mr. Harold Montgomery, his entire estate, valued at approximately $3.5 million, is hereby left to his grandson, Oliver Montgomery. For a second, the room went silent. I could almost picture my grandfather's faint smirk in my mind, as if he'd planned this moment. My parents' smiles froze. Claire's jaw dropped. Then came the part none of us expected. The lawyer continued, "There are additional stipulations you'll want to hear." My mother was the first to recover, her voice overly bright. "Well, that makes sense," she said, clapping lightly. "Oliver was always close to Dad. Naturally, he'll need our guidance." She turned to my father. "We'll help him, won't we?" My dad nodded seriously. Yes, Harold meant well, but Oliver's not equipped to manage something of this scale. It could ruin him. "It's best we oversee the estate." Ruin him? That phrase burned in my chest. They didn't see me as capable. They saw me as an obstacle. Claire leaned in with her usual smirk. "Don't take it the wrong way, Oliver, but you've never exactly been responsible. Remember that credit card you maxed out in college?" She laughed softly. "Dad's right. This could mess you up. Let us help." Before I could speak, the lawyer cut in. "Mr. Montgomery's instructions are very clear. The estate belongs solely to Oliver. No trustees, no oversight, full control." His gaze flicked toward me, almost knowingly. My grandfather had seen this coming. But my mother wasn't done. She placed a hand on my arm, her nails digging slightly into my sleeve. "Oliver, sweetheart, we just want what's best for you. Let's treat this as a family effort. Grandpa would want us all to benefit." That word, benefit, hung in the air like smoke. Inside, I was furious. After years of being treated like nothing, of sleeping in my car while they funded Claire's dream life, they still believed I wasn't capable of handling my own success. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about pride. Claire crossed her legs, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Be realistic, Oliver. You don't even own a house. You still rent. You've never invested. What if you lose it all? Dad's managed money his entire life. It only makes sense he handles it." The lawyer didn't even look up this time. "Again, the will is explicit. Only Oliver is to manage the estate." My dad's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. "We're just worried about you, son. You understand." Son. That word felt hollow coming from him, the same man who threw me out without a dollar to my name. My mom chimed in softly. "We were hard on you because we wanted the best for you. Don't hold grudges. Let's move forward as a family." I almost laughed. Throwing me out wasn't tough love. It was abandonment. My grandfather, not them, was the one who'd prepared me for life. I stayed quiet, letting them talk themselves in circles. By the time the lawyer finished reading the rest, my parents were whispering, and Claire was already on her phone, probably bragging to her friends. Meanwhile, I felt something shift inside me. After years of being powerless, I finally had control, and they hated it. When it was over, my mom stood quickly. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Oliver, we'll discuss details at home. You'll come over tonight, won't you?" My dad added, "We'll handle the planning, investments, taxes, everything." Claire gave me a smug smile as we walked out. "You're lucky, Oliver. Without us, you'd drown in all this." I clenched my fists. Lucky? No, I wasn't lucky. I was chosen. My grandfather saw through them, and this was his final message. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. That afternoon, I left the office with my grandfather's will in hand. My parents walked out with brittle smiles, but I could feel their anger burning through their polite faces. I knew this wasn't over, and I was right. That night, around 9, there was a knock at my apartment door. Claire stood there, dressed up like she'd come straight from a fashion shoot. She didn't wait for an invitation, just walked right in. "Cute place," she said, scanning my small living room. "But let's be honest, Oliver, this won't do anymore. You'll need something grander. Luckily, I can help." I sighed. "What do you want, Claire?" She sat on my couch like she owned it. "I'm here to make sure you don't embarrass yourself with this inheritance. You've lived small for so long, you don't realize what you have. Think about it. Dad knows investments, Mom knows people, and I know style. Together, we could grow Grandpa's estate. But you need to stop being stubborn." Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they echoed every insult I'd ever heard from my parents. "I don't need help," I said flatly. "Grandpa left it to me, not you, not them." Her smile faltered. "Oh, Oliver, you really think that? You think Grandpa didn't expect you to lean on us? You wouldn't even have met with the lawyer if Mom hadn't told you when to go." That's when I realized she wasn't there to help. She was testing me. A week later, the real betrayal came. The lawyer called. "Oliver, did you authorize any changes to the estate account?" My stomach dropped. "No. Why?" "Someone tried accessing the funds. They claimed to represent you. The bank flagged it because of the will's stipulations." I didn't need to ask who. It was my parents. That night, I drove by their house. Same 2 cars in the driveway, porch light glowing warm. It looked exactly like the home they'd thrown me out of. Only now, I didn't feel sad. I felt cold. They weren't just manipulating me anymore. They were trying to steal from me. Later that night, Claire texted, "Don't be naive, Oliver. Money belongs to people who know how to use it. Be smart, or you'll lose it all." I stared at that message for a long time, feeling something inside me snap. They would never see me as their equal. Not now, not ever. My grandfather once told me, "Oliver, don't let anyone tell you what you're worth. You decide that." For years, I hadn't believed him, but now I finally understood. That night marked a turning point. I wasn't just going to protect what was mine. I was going to make them regret ever underestimating me. What I didn't know was that this was only the beginning, and things were about to get a whole lot uglier. When it all started, I felt like the ground had been pulled from under me. Every move I made seemed like more proof to everyone that I wasn't capable of handling what I'd been given. The fear of confirming their doubts made me freeze. Maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't strong enough. Maybe I'd sink under this inheritance the way they said I would. For hours, I sat there, letting old memories replay in my head. Every insult, every dismissal, Every time they told me I was worthless, it felt like I was 18 again, sleeping in the back seat of my car, wondering if I'd even make it another week. Then I opened the drawer of the table beside me, and there it was, an old envelope I'd nearly forgotten about. My grandfather had given it to me on my 21st birthday. I'd kept it all these years, but never opened it again. Inside was a letter in his firm but slightly shaky handwriting. Oliver, if you're reading this, I hope you've learned that the world never gives, it takes. Don't let it. You are stronger than you know, and one day you'll have to prove it. When that moment comes, don't shrink. Stand tall. They can only take from you what you hand them. I read it over and over until the words etched themselves into me. My grandfather had known. He had seen through my parents long before I ever did, and he trusted me to rise above them. That night, something inside me shifted. I was still at rock bottom, lonely, overwhelmed, and exhausted. But I began to plan, quietly, carefully. I started documenting everything. Copies of the bank's report about the attempted account access, Claire's text messages, even notes about every rumor I heard and who it came from. At work, I stayed late, using the company's public computers to research estate law, trust funds, and property management. If they wanted to see me as incapable, I'd become the most capable person in the room. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I smiled when people sneered. I stayed calm when my parents threw little barbs my way. I acted as if I was backing down, while beneath the surface, I was quietly building something real. It was lonely, painful. Every day felt like walking a tightrope over a drop that never ended. But in the silence, there was strength. For once, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. And I knew deep down my grandfather would have been proud. I didn't know when it would happen, but I swore to myself that one day the balance would shift. I'd stop being the target and start being the one holding the strings. I just didn't expect that moment to come so soon, or for my parents to push as hard as they did. The change started gradually, but once it began, it felt unstoppable, like the tide finally turning in my favor. I kept my head down, worked long hours, and poured myself into learning everything I could about handling wealth responsibly. It was never about the money. It was about proving I wasn't the helpless kid my parents said I was. The first real turning point came when I hired a financial advisor. Not someone flashy or connected to my parents' world, but a quiet, meticulous man named Richard, recommended by a coworker. He wasn't impressed by the size of the estate. He didn't treat me like a child. He asked thoughtful questions, listened carefully, and by the end of our first meeting, handed me a simple plan. Investments diversified, taxes covered, long-term stability built in. You're more than capable, he said. You just needed someone to confirm it. Those words lit something inside me. For the first time, I wasn't just holding on to my grandfather's gift out of fear. I was building on it. I used part of the estate to buy a small home in a quiet part of town. Nothing fancy, nothing to provoke judgment, but it was mine. That first night, I stood in the middle of the empty living room and let the silence wash over me. No one could throw me out. No one could tell me I didn't belong. At work, things shifted too. I volunteered for new projects, stayed late, delivered results beyond expectations. People began to notice. I earned a promotion, not huge, but meaningful. My boss told me, "You've got leadership in you, Oliver. You just need to believe it." I didn't brag or share anything publicly. I knew better. But small towns have a way of spreading news. Soon, whispers began. He bought a house. He's moving up at work. Maybe Harold knew what he was doing after all. The rumors my parents had planted for years started to fade, replaced with something else: respect. And that terrified them. One evening, Claire showed up at my house uninvited. I didn't let her pass the porch. She stood there, arms crossed, her tone sharp. "Nice place," she said. "Did you decorate it yourself? Or did you finally get someone to hold your hand?" I didn't react. "I'm doing fine, Claire. Better than fine." Her expression hardened. "Don't get cocky, Oliver. You think a house and a job promotion mean you've won? Dad's already looking into ways." She stopped herself, biting her lip. But I caught it. My father was already planning his next move. That's when I realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about positioning. Every success was leverage. Every step forward was protection. I started aligning myself with people my parents couldn't influence. I joined a local charity board in my grandfather's name, working alongside those who'd respected him. Each handshake, each project, another thread in a network they couldn't touch. Inside, I was still cautious, but confidence was building. They expected me to drown in responsibility. Instead, I was learning to swim in deeper waters than they ever imagined. Still, I stayed ready. I knew a storm was coming. My parents weren't the type to accept defeat quietly. They'd tried manipulation, theft, and slander. None of it worked. So their next move, I knew, would be desperate. And when it came, I had to be ready to strike back. That setup came almost by accident. Or maybe it was fate. At one of those charity board meetings, I met a man named Daniel Grant, a retired attorney in his late 50s, calm and sharp-eyed. He'd known my grandfather personally. They'd played chess every Thursday for nearly a decade. When he learned who I was, his face softened. "Harold was proud of you," he said. "You should know that." Later, over coffee, Daniel leaned in and lowered his voice. "Be careful. Your grandfather anticipated trouble after his passing. He put certain protections in place." "Protections?" I asked. He nodded. "Let's talk more formally. Just know, if your parents overstep, it won't just be wrong. It'll be legally disastrous for them." For the first time, I realized I wasn't just defending, I had ammunition. Over the next few weeks, Daniel showed me how my grandfather had structured everything. The estate wasn't a lump sum. It was a system: deeds, property shares, and a trust for philanthropic projects in my name. And hidden in the paperwork were clauses that disinherited my parents if they ever tried to interfere. My grandfather had seen this coming. He'd protected me even beyond his lifetime. Meanwhile, my parents grew bolder. Formal letters started arriving, suggesting family collaboration. One proposed adding Claire as a paid liaison. Another suggested selling off assets and pooling the proceeds into trusted family accounts. I didn't respond, but I kept everything. Daniel told me paper trails are powerful. Every word they write is another rope around their own necks. At the same time, my career took off again. Another promotion, more responsibility, more respect. People started to see me as someone who belonged at the table. Every bit of success dismantled their narrative piece by piece. They thought I was still that boy they'd thrown out. They had no idea how much I'd grown. Then came the moment that tied everything together. Daniel handed me a worn leather notebook. "Your grandfather asked me to give you this when you were ready," he said. It didn't take long. One crisp autumn morning, Daniel called me. His voice was calm but firm. "Oliver, your parents just filed a petition. They're claiming you're unfit to manage the estate and are requesting guardianship of the assets." Guardianship. At 27. I almost laughed. After everything I'd built, they still thought they could brand me as incapable. But this time, their attack was public, and that was their mistake. Daniel and I had prepared for this. For months, we'd built an airtight case. Every letter, every forged attempt, every clause of the will that disinherited them for interference. When the court date came, I walked in wearing a plain suit. No drama. My parents sat beside Claire, smug and confident. My mother even smiled at me, as though she was forgiving me for making her do this. Their lawyer painted me as unstable and inexperienced. Claire nodded along, playing her party, he. Then Daniel stood. "Your Honor, this isn't about competence, it's about greed." He laid out the evidence one by one. The bank attempt, the manipulative letters, the will's clauses, and finally, my grandfather's own notebook, where he had written, "If they try to take what isn't theirs, it will be proof enough of why I chose Oliver." The words hit like a gavel. The judge's ruling was short and final. Petition denied. The estate remains under Oliver Montgomery's control. Any further interference will not be tolerated. It was over in less than an hour, but the damage to them was permanent. They'd exposed themselves completely, to the court, to the town, to everyone who once believed their lies. Outside the courthouse, my mother reached out one last time. "Oliver, sweetheart, we only did this for you. You don't understand." "No," I said quietly. "You did it for yourselves. Grandpa knew, and now everyone else does too." Her hand fell. My father couldn't look at me. Claire stormed off. As I stepped into the sunlight, the weight of years lifted. I'd not only defended my grandfather's trust, I'd proven I was everything they said I'd never be. But the aftermath, that was something else entirely. Their reputations unraveled. My mother's social circle froze her out. My father's business partners backed away. Claire lost her relationship and moved back in with them. The three of them together again, stewing in their own bitterness. Meanwhile, my life grew. I invested in causes my grandfather believed in, took leadership roles, and built something meaningful. And one evening, I drove past my parents' house, the same one they'd thrown me out of years ago. The porch light flickered. The lawn was unkempt. The house looked tired. I sat there for a long time, remembering everything. The pain, the exile, the shame. And I realized none of it owned me anymore. They hadn't destroyed me. They'd forged me. The real revenge wasn't in humiliating them. It was in no longer needing them. I rolled down the window, breathed in the cool air, and whispered, "Grandpa was right. I decide what I'm worth." Then I drove away, leaving that house and everything it represented behind for good. They tried to cut me out of their lives. In the end, I was the one who let them go.